There's a little no-through road on the eastern side of Melbourne, named after the patron saint of stomach aches, St Elmo. My parents made the move to Ferntree Gully in 1977 and decided this particular avenue, nestled in the foothills of the Dandenong Ranges, was the ideal environment for their growing family. I lived there for more than half my life. Back then, Mum was a hairdresser and Dad fixed electronics and twiddled knobs for bands. There was an old people's home on St Elmo. Mum used to cut hair for the ladies, and whenever my younger sisters or I would walk down the street, they would stop and say hello, invite us inside and tell us stories of the olden days. We never minded because the stories always came with sweets or biscuits. Next door to us was a great big dirt factory on 6 acres owned by Richie Nottage. My best friend Paul lived 2 doors down, and we used to sneak into Richie's when no one was watching and jump off the big piles of sawdust, dirt and manure. For some reason, Mum would always know where we'd been. I could never work out how. I couldn't understand why people had such a fascination with Richie's dirt. They would hand over all this money, and Richie would give them dirt. I tried it myself one day to see if I could make money the same way. Guess I just didn't have Richie's magical touch because no one bought any of my dirt. There was a small milk bar on the corner of St Elmo where we regularly spent our pocket money. When you entered, a bell on the door would chime to let the milk bar lady know we were there. She'd always smile and give us a few extra lollies. Milk bar never made a lot of money and closed after a few years to make more room for the old people's home. The other kids in our neighbourhood knew our house as the one with all the speaker boxes in the garden. Kids would walk down the street just to see what strange equipment would be in the garden that week. Our house was the sort every kid seemed to know about. We'd fill in hours playing with Dad's electrical equipment. They made great spaceships and time machines to discover the galaxy from. Our house was old and used to be a farmhouse long before the other houses started popping up on the street. We used to dig in the garden and find old bottles and cow bones. We fantasised we'll find in ancient Roman treasures. Dad would always play his music at incredible volumes. The windows in my room would rattle me to sleep in time to the music. This happened so often that I found I had trouble sleeping when the music was turned off. It was no surprise to anyone that I soon started playing guitar. By the time I was a teenager, Paul, his brother Steve and I had formed our own band. We'd all get together, borrow Dad's sound equipment and make lots of noise. The neighbours never complained. I guess they were so used to noise from our house. Besides, we could never compete with the volume of Dad's music. Slowly, more and more of the older houses were torn down to build units, and the new neighbours complained about the smell of compost from the dirt factory, forcing Richie to move away. More units were built on the land from the dirt factory, and then the neighbours complained about all the new units. One thing everyone would agree on though, is that the gardens surrounding them always managed to produce thriving flowers. All except one, that is. They cemented the garden beds and put down astroturf. I guess they hadn't realised they were living on the most fertile dirt in all of Ferntree Gully. Mum and Dad separated when I was a teenager, and I moved away from St Elmo. Dad stayed on. He loved our house and said he would remain in St Elmo Avenue till his dying day. The street continued to change in my absence. The old people's home got bigger, and even more houses were pulled down to make way for units. The little street I grew up on was getting busier and busier. Dad had many friends, and the door to his house was always open. Whenever I visited, his lounge room would be full of people listening to or playing music. Dad died 2 years ago, still in the house he loved so much. St Elmo just isn't the same anymore, and most of the places where I played no longer exist. Our house is no longer there. It was pulled down to make way for even more units. I miss those days at St Elmo Avenue, but I can revisit them through my happy childhood memories. They will always be there for me.